Hello everyone, Mr.ManUpchuck here, with my Urtet Remnant of Memnarch Commander deck tech. And obviously the commander is Urtet Remnant of Memnarch. 3 colorless mana for a legendary artifact creature mirror. Whenever you cast a mirror spell, create a 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature token. At the beginning of a combat on your turn, untap each mirror you control. Very, very important part of the card. Pay Wooburg, tap. Put 3 +1/+1 counters on each mirror you control. Activate only during your turn, and he is a 2/2. Obviously, that's a pretty powerful effect, especially in a colorless deck, or especially in a 5-color deck, excuse me. He's not crazy big at only a 2/2, but that will change very, very quickly. Now, this deck makes a lot of tokens, so you're going to want a bunch of tokens. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mirror tokens. A Phyrexian mirror token, I would definitely recommend getting at least 2. A human token, treasure token, and a copy token. Now, obviously, if you add other cards that make tokens, you want to add those as well. But for the most part, that is all the tokens you'll need in this specific deck. Now, starting off, I'm going to go through some ramp cards that are just overall, just some pretty good ramp. Starting with Broker's Charm for a green, white, and a blue. It's an instant. Choose one. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Destroy target enchantment or draw 2. For the most part, I use this to draw 2, maybe destroy an enchantment. But for 3 mana, for 3 different options, it's a very good card to add, especially in a 5-color deck. Next up, obviously, Commander Sphere. Should be in most commander decks, especially if you need ramp. Thoughtcast. Thoughtcast, I think, is a very good card, especially affinity for artifacts. It normally would cost 4 and a blue, but if you tap artifacts to pay for it, you can draw 2, which is always good. Kodama's Reach, some more land ramp. You can search for 2 basics, put one on the battlefield, put one in your hand, tap, then shuffle. I'd also like to say, amazing art with the borderless foil. Love it. Distant Melody, the best draw spell in any single tribal deck. It's 3 and a blue. Choose target creature type, draw for each permanent you control of that type. That will, for the most part, be a very large number in this deck because we run so many mirror. Very good card. Then we have Cultivate. Again, more land ramp. 2 and a green. Search your library for 2 basic lands. Reveal them. Put 1 on the battlefield. Tapped 1 into your hand. Good, overall good card. Next is Sign in Blood. For 2 mana, getting to draw 2 and lose 2 is just insane. And it just, I don't know, love the art. That's the main reason why I put it in. Then we have Harvest Season, a card that works very, very good, and especially this deck with a lot of creatures tapping for mana. For a green and 2 colorless, search your library for X basic land cards, where X is the number of tapped creatures you control, and put them onto the battlefield. Not into your hand, directly on the battlefield. Even if you're playing this turn, let's say 5, you probably have at least 3 creatures. That's 3 mana for 3 more basics that enter the battlefield that turn. Very, very good card. Chromatic Lantern, a very good card and should be in every 5-color deck. 3 colorless, lands you control have add 1 mana of any color, then you can tap it and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Very good land fixing. It's a great card. Then we have Thran Dynamo, 4 mana, tap, add 3 colorless. Just a good card. You basically can tap it and then just play any of your mirrors. Pretty good. Soul Ring, probably one of the best artifacts in all of Commander, in my opinion. 1 mana for artifact that taps for 2. Very, very useful. Next, a Lotus Petal. This isn't 100% necessary. It's a very good card for 0 mana. You just get a free mana for sacking it. It's pretty good with some enchantments if it triggers like an artifact entering because it's free. It can help you get Urtet out for pretty much turn 2 because you will ramp mostly every turn with this deck. But it's just overall pretty good card. Next up, Arcane Signet. Just a great card. 2 mana to add 1 mana of any color every turn is very good, and it's an artifact, which is always good. Alright, so that concludes the ramp part of the deck tech. Some card draw, some artifact ramp, as well as some land ramp. overall, just this deck wants to ramp pretty quickly. Next, I'm going to go over some just good instant sorcery removal type stuff. Sometimes it's just helping you deal with some of your opponent's stuff. Some of it's keeping your stuff alive. Just removal, some interaction. Wake the Past for 5, a red and a white. Return all artifacts from your graveyard to the battlefield. They gain haste. Very good. If your board gets wiped, you can play this the next turn. All your stuff comes back. It's crazy. Your tokens won't be back, which is sad, but it's completely fine. It's such a good card. And we have Raise the Palisade for 4 and a blue. Choose a creature type, obviously choosing Mirror in this deck. Return all creatures that aren't the chosen type to the owner's hands. This is a great game ender. You play this, swing out with your Mirror, everyone dies. Very good card. Next up, we have Void Slime. For a green, a blue, and a blue, counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. This is just a very, very good overall instant, especially in this very cool art. I think it's very Adventure Time-esque. That's part of the reason why I included it overall, but it's also just a great card. Then, obviously, Path to Exile, 1 white to exile something, and all that person gets is to search a basic. It's such a good card. I only wish I had a better art. Organic Extinction, 8 and 2 white is a lot, but Improvise definitely helps, letting you tap creatures to play it. Destroy all non-artifact creatures. In a deck that basically only runs artifact creatures, it's a board wipe, and then you kind of can win after that, or maybe the next couple turns. Very, very good. Lastly, a Generous Gift, 2 and a white. Destroy target permanent, its controller creates an elephant. So you destroy for 3 mana, you do destroy something, and they just get an elephant. That's it. It's very good. It's kind of expensive. There's definitely better interaction out there, but it's a pretty good cheap option. All right, so next up we have all of the Mirror that are mana based. Now most of these will be pretty obvious and you'll know what most of them are, but some of them maybe will be interesting at some of the more uncommon Mirror. So starting off, Lydian Mirror just taps for 2 mana, tap it for a black. Gold Mirror does 2 mana, tap it for a white. Paladinium Mirror, 3 mana, tap, add 2 colorless, very good. Silver Mirror, you can tap it to add blue. Iron Mirror, tap it to add red. Copper Mirror, tap it to add green. Those 5 make Wooburg, and they're overall pretty good. They have cool art. I like them a whole lot, especially the old ones. Alloy Mirror is 3, and you can tap and add 1 mana of any color. It's very good. I highly recommend playing all the mana Mirror that you can. They're all good. They're all worth playing. Lastly, we have Mirror Convert. As Toxic 1, you can pay 2 and add 1. It's not as good, but the Toxic is pretty useful. It may be a win con, maybe. But overall, to start paying life to get more ramp is pretty good. So that is all the mana-based Mirror. Now I'll move on to some just overall good artifacts. Since this is a artifact deck, essentially, we run a ton of artifacts, as you could imagine. And these are all artifacts I think need to be in the deck for it to really work as its best. Obelisk of Erd, Convoke, you can tap creatures to help cast it. So for 6 mana, you can basically play it for free. When it enters, choose a creature type, choose Mirror. They just get +2/+2. A great buff, helps you win the game because this win for the most part, or for this deck, wins for the most part off of combat damage. Next is Howling Line. 2 mana. Everyone draws an additional card at their draw step. Overall, it's really good because, yes, you were only getting 1 card and your opponents are technically getting 3. Each opponent's getting an extra. But it's worth it because that 1 card will help you so much in a deck that kind of struggles with some card draw. Combine Chrysalis. For a blue and a green, giving all your creature tokens flying is very good, especially with how many we make. You give all of your creature tokens now have flying, then you give them infect, you smack someone, you win. It's very good. Or you just have them with flying and they deal a bunch of damage. Crazy card. Unwinding Clock, 4 mana, letting you untap all your artifacts during everyone else's untap step is very good. What I would highly recommend doing is getting an Unwinding Clock as well as a Vidalcan Orrery and something that lets you draw every turn. That way you can essentially take a turn on everyone's turns. You just won't untap land, instead you'll untap your creatures. And then with those creatures you can use them to add mana, which is always good. Next up, Door of Destinies, 4 mana, choose a creature type, choosing Mirror. Whenever you cast a creature of the chosen type, put a charge counter. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1 for each charge counter. Now, this card I have not gotten to use in a game where it went crazy, but the few games I've used it in, and even if it just gets 3 counters, that's 3 more damage your creatures can do every turn, and 3 more damage they can take. Very, very good card. The only problem is you need to get it out early for it to work its best. Skull Clamp, very good early card draw, especially for 1 mana, and then you 1 mana each turn, getting to draw 2 in exchange for losing a creature. It's good until your creatures get too big for that, which can happen. It will happen in the deck if it plays right. But overall, it's still a great card to have, especially getting it out turn 1 or 2. Mystic Forge. This is a very good card. You can look at the top card of your library anytime. You can cast artifact spells and colorless spells from the top of your library. You can tap, pay 1, exile the top card. So this essentially as long as you're able to cast artifact spells, this card will go crazy. You'll get to play so many cards every turn. But I would recommend, and I've gotten this tip from some other people, take out some of the cards that aren't artifacts and make them artifacts. So I'm trying to find a way to switch all my card draw over to just card draw from artifacts, and then this card will be way better. So working on that, but for right now, it's still a good card. Next up is Mind's Eye. 5 mana. Whenever someone draws, you can pay 1 if you do draw a card. It's pretty good. Again, helps you with card draw. The only problem is 5 mana and then 1 mana whenever someone draws is kind of a lot. But if you're not planning to win the game in a turn, you can probably tap your creatures for it, which is pretty good. Still recommend putting it in. Next up, Vanquisher's Banner. 5 mana. Choose a creature type. We'll obviously choose Mirror. And whenever the creatures of the chosen type get +1/+1, and whenever you cast a creature of that type, draw a card. This will help a lot with card draw, especially in the early game when you're casting a bunch of Mirror each turn. It's very, very good. Highly recommend putting in a Vanquish Banner. Next up, Wishclaw Talisman. Probably the most fun card that's ever been printed in Magic, in my opinion. I love this card. 1 mana and a black, enters with 3 wish counters. You can pay 1, tap it, remove a wish counter, and then tutor. But then you have to give it to one of your opponents. This card I find being really good for bargaining, especially when you're either a little bit behind or way ahead. You play this, you give it to someone who's in second and say, hey, don't target me, you get to tutor, and then you give it to them, and hopefully they'll send it back to you. If not, one of your opponents gets it and gets to search. But either way, 3 mana to tutor is very, very good, even if you only get to do it once. Next up, Mirror Matrix. This card, I gotta be honest, kind of sucks. 5 mana, it's indestructible. All your mirror get +1/+1. It's an alright card. For 5 mana, only getting your mirror +1/+1 though isn't great. There is another ability, 5 mana, you can put a mirror onto the battlefield. That's not great. It's not horrible though. But I just really like the art, so I had to put it in. Blinkmoth Urn. This card goes insane. Literally every single turn, you're going to get so much mana out of this. 5, at the beginning of each player's pre-combat main phase, if Blinkmoth Urn is untapped, they add colorless for each artifact they control. This will easily net you like 30 mana in the late game. It's crazy. It's one of the best cards in the deck. The only problem is it affects everyone. So if someone else is playing an artifact deck, they'll get a bunch of benefits out of it as well. Mirror Welder. This lets you just give, if one of your good artifacts went away and it had an activated ability, such as a card will come up to later, this card will help. Oh, well, now we're on the mirror that have abilities that aren't tap. I probably should have mentioned that. So this is all the utility artifacts out of the way. Those are all very good. Would recommend. That was a rough transition, but whatever. These are the mirror that I'll activate. Mirror Welder, very good. Highly recommend it. Just because some of your artifacts will be leaving because they're good. People will target them. This just makes it so you can kind of have them over on the field for a little bit longer. So next up, we have Shimmermere. This lets you just cast artifact spells as though it had flash, and it has flashes itself. It's alright. It's mainly just another mirror to play. I don't really see the flash coming in handy that often, but it's a pretty good card. Perilous Mirror. 2 mana. When it dies, just deal 2. It's not bad. It's a cheap mirror that can maybe do something. Worst case scenario, you can just ping itself or something else to get it low and then equip like a skull clamp to it just so you can get the draw off. It's not horrible. Ichor Claw Mirror, very good. 2 mana, it has Infect, that's the big thing. And whenever it becomes blocked, it gets +2/+2, which is also good. Which means Infect damage will help even more, especially if you can give it Trample. Again, same thing with Plague Mirror. It has Infect. 2 mana for an Infect, and it taps for mana. Very good. But the main thing, the reason why I didn't put it in with the Mana Mirror is that it also has Infect. So it's going to often be a combat-based mirror. Next up, Hover Mirror. 2 mana, Flying Vigilance. It's a 1/2. Very good as flying, and it has Vigilance. So you can attack with it, and it still have it be a huge blocker, especially a flying huge blocker, when you give it all those buffs from all of the tribe-based stuff, as well as Urtet's activated ability, giving it counters. Darksteel Mail. 3 mana mirror that's indestructible and a 0/1. Huge blocker. You can attack with it every turn if you want to, hoping it will get through. Crazy. It's just indestructible. It's really useful in a deck that kind of struggles with having big creatures without a bunch of buffs. Mere Scrappling. 1 mana, sack it, put a +1/+1 counter. This is good because when it's dying, you can just sacrifice it to get the +1/+1 counters on something else. I normally put it on one of my flyers or someone with Infect, but sometimes buffing Urtet is good, so then he can maybe survive some removal spell of some sort. Parcel Mirror. 2 mana, play it, and then 2 mana to sack it and draw a card. That's pretty good, especially if you need some extra card draw. And it just looks, I think it looks pretty funny with his little backpack and everything. Mirror Kinsmith. It's a 4 mana mirror that lets you search, that lets you tutor for a mirror. It's very, very good. You use Kinsmith. For the most part, you will tutor a card I will show you later, and it will make a ton of sense when you hear it. Mirror Superior. I think this card is highly slept on. The only problem is, it's 2 mana for a 5/6. That's crazy. But you have to spend mana produced by a creature to cast it. So in a mirror deck, it's not a problem. You'll be able to do that so easily. But for some other decks, they might struggle, and I think that's why it's slept on. Mirror Retriever. Whenever it dies, return another target artifact from your graveyard to your hand. That's good. It dies. Grab. Let's say if this Blinkmoth Urn was destroyed, you now get this back, and you're back in the game, possibly. Overall, all of the utility mirror are very good, very useful in the deck. Kind of necessary for the deck to work, but not entirely. They just help out a lot, especially since they are mirror, and this deck needs a lot. Mirrored and Besieged. A blue, 2 colorless for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you choose Mirian or Phyrexian. Mirian's obviously better. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you make a 1/1 mirror token. The Urtet just says whenever you cast a mirror, make a token. This says whenever you cast an artifact, make a token. That's a mirror. So between these two, every time you play a mirror, you're getting 2, and every time you play an artifact, you'll be getting 1. Overall, very good. I think this card helps you ramp so fast with creatures, because those creatures, for the most part, will tap for mana, as I will show you in a second. Reflection of Litjaro. For 1 blue and 4 colorless, when it enters a battlefield creature, choose a creature type. Choose mirror, obviously, in a mirror tribal deck. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy it. This is really good, because then every time you cast any mirror, you're just going to make a second one. So if there's a mirror, let's say, I don't know, mirror Battlesphere. So in ETBs, you make 4 mirror tokens. Well, now you have a copy. Now you have 8 mirror tokens total, just off of 1 card. Very good. This card is a very slept-on card. I don't actually know if it is. That might have been a completely wrong statement. But I have not seen people playing it that much. I definitely think you should put it in all of your tribal decks, if you can. Storm the Vault. Very interesting card. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token. That's pretty good. But at the end of step, this is what matters. If you control 5 or more artifacts, you always will in this deck for the most part, especially on turn 4. You flip it into a land that lets you add a blue for each artifact you control. It's very similar to Blinkmoth Urn, as in you get a bunch of mana for having artifacts, but it's colored mana. That won't matter that much. This deck, like you've seen, is mostly colorless, with some blue thrown in, which this does produce blue, which is always nice. Cataclysmic Gearhulk, it's 5 mana. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control. Sack the rest. It's like a mini board wipe, but for 5 mana, which is good, and you get a 4/5 vigilance, so another blocker. I also think the art is very gorgeous. One of the reasons I put it in, I think Magic art is very nice, so I often am very biased when it comes to that stuff. Brutaclad Telcore Engineer, I butchered that. 4 mana, and then creature tokens you control have haste. Very, very important. At the beginning of the combat on your turn, create a Phyrexian Mirror, and then you may choose a creature token you control, and if you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token. So all of your 1/1 mirrors are now 2/1 Phyrexian Mirror, so they're 1 bigger, and they look cooler. The Phyrexian Mirror token is gorgeous, just like this Brutaclad. So it is a very good card. You're getting a token every turn, and all of your mirror are now bigger and stronger. Padim, Console of Innovation. Artifacts you control have hexproof. And then if at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control the artifact with the highest mana value or tied for the highest, draw a card. It's just a good card. Gives your artifacts hexproof. That's the big thing. Makes them harder to deal with. Chief of the Foundry. Just gives your other artifact creatures you control +1/+1. Just a good card. Some some buffs. Very important card. Citanual Hierophants. But it says creatures you control have tap, add green. This is a very important card. Any card that says creatures you control have tap, add some form of mana is very good, because that makes all of your mirrors useful now instead of just as bodies. They now are essentially mana, and it's this card and any other card that says that are so good in the deck. I need to find more cards that do that, and I have. I don't know if there's any more in the deck that are not enchantments, but we will get to that later. Mirrorsmith. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1, and if you do, make a mirror. Again, this is good. You essentially you could pretty much tap a mirror to then get another mirror whenever you cast an artifact. It's pretty good. I haven't seen it used a ton in this deck, but it is definitely still a good card, especially for only 2 mana. Ornithopter. I don't think this needs explaining. It's a 0 mana flying 0/2. It's a flying blocker for free. And it's an artifact, so you get your triggers off of some of your stuff. Very good. This card should be in every deck, I think, unless you're playing a flying deck. Foundry Inspector. This just artifact spells you control cost 1 less to cast. Very good. This makes your mirror from all your 2 mana mirror are now 1, all your 3 mana mirror 2. It just makes you be able to pump out spells that much faster. Speaking of which, we have my favorite card in the entire deck, just because of the stupid Fortnite secret lair that they did, which was very funny. But this is actually an Ethereum Sculptor with the secret layer of the Fortnite one. So it's Supply Llama. And it's the same thing as the Foundry Inspector. Artifact spells you control cost 1 less to cast. Both of these guys on the field, all of your mirror are either free or basically 1 mana. Very good. Art's hilarious, especially if you get the Supply Llama, which is a lot more, but it's worth it entirely. Alright, these next cards are the best cards in the entire deck. You will not see, these are the powerhouse of the deck that will make you win if you can get most of them out, if not all of them. And I will get to the land base in just a bit, right after this. So starting up, Alibu of Ancient Witness. Other artifact creatures you control have haste. That means all your mirror now have haste. Whenever 1 or more artifact creatures you control attack, Alibu Ancient Witness deals X damage to any target that can target a player. You scry X, where X is the number of tapped artifacts you control. So if you are attacking out with 30 mirror or 30 artifact creatures, you can hit someone in the face for 30 and then scry 30. It's crazy. It's just, this card is so good. It will, once you play it, it will get hated out within probably 2 turns, but it is so good. If you can let this guy stay, he will win you the game. Then we have Indomitable Archangel, 2 white, flying. Artifacts you control have Shroud as long as you go 3 or more. As long as you control 3 or more artifacts, you will always have 3 or more. Unless there is a board wipe, you will always have 3 or more. It gives it makes it so all your artifacts can't be the target of spells or abilities. It's like hexproof, but way better. And you get a 4/4 flyer from it. A very good card. I don't really remember what set this came from, but I love this card. Next up, we have the best card in the entire deck, Elven Chorus. 3 in a green. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You can cast creature spells on the top of your library at any time. Very good. Creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. It's like the Citanual Hierophants, but it's 1 mana of any color, and it's on an enchantment. And it also lets you cast creature spells from the top of your library. So you get to keep pumping out mana as long as you keep hitting creatures. This card is so good. If you get this card out and it doesn't get removed fast, it will very quickly get you in the lead and then eventually win you the game. Best card in the deck by far. Next is the best creature in the deck, Mirror Battlesphere. 7 mana. When it enters, you make 4 mirror tokens. I will read the rest of it, but the rest doesn't really matter. Whenever a Mirror Battlesphere attacks, you may tap X mirror you control. If you do, it gets +X until end of turn and deals X damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. It's alright. If you're in a 1v1, using the second ability is good. But the first part, when it enters making 4 colorless mirrors, is crazy. Especially, I will quickly show you why this card is the best creature. Because it might not seem that good because it only goes 4 once, which is obviously still crazy. But I think the best artifact printed in recent years. Void Mirror. 3 mana to play it, and then 2 mana, it becomes a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn. That's any target. But in this deck, you will target Mirror Battlesphere. Every turn, you get a second Mirror Battlesphere. Pay 2 mana, get a copy of Mirror Battlesphere. You get 4 more mirror. Sorry, I had a brain fart. And then you get 4 off of this from when I first cast. So every turn, you're at least getting 4 mirror for 2 mana. That's crazy. And you're getting another huge Battlesphere until end of turn. It doesn't have haste, and the tokens probably won't, but it's still just an insane card. It is just crazy. I don't know why they ever printed this, but I'm so happy they did. Next, the easiest way to win in the deck. It's probably not a surprise when I show you. You won't be. Triumph of the Horde. 2 colorless, 2 green. Until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 trample and infect. Infect is the way this deck wins. It's an infect deck. If you can't win off of combat damage, you'll win off infect. It's just crazy. Triumph of the Hordes, easily the easiest win con in the deck. So good. You have to play it if you're playing this deck. It is so good. I would recommend Triumph of the Hordes to anyone who has any deck that has more than like 3 creatures in it. It's good. Next, the mana base. My mana base is very cheap. I never splurge on mana bases, and I need to because it is pretty clear with this deck. The lands are lacking. Like I have a Lumbering Falls, so it enters tapped, and then next turn you can tap it for Simic. Training Center, splurge a little bit, actually pulled it from a pack. It enters as long as you control, and it enters untapped, as long as you have 2 or more opponents, and then it taps for Is It. Very good. I would like to get all of the lands, the 2 or more opponent lands, but obviously I'm broke. So next we have Crystal Quarry. This is very important. 5 tap, add Wooburg. That triggers Urtet. So you use your colorless mana to pay that to activate Urtet if you don't have the color. It's just great. Also, it looks pretty cool. Next, we have Command Tower. It's a land taps for Wooburg because of what Urtet has. Path of Ancestry. Enters the battlefield tap, and you can add 1 mana of any color in your commander's identity, so Wooburg. And when that mana is spent to catch a creature that shares a creature type with your commander's scry one. So whenever you use this to cast a mirror, because Urtet's a mirror, you get the scry one, which is just pretty good. I like it a lot. Next, we have 6 basic forests. I splurged on the art because love forests. I also play green too much. 4 plains. Did not splurge on those as much. 5 swamps, which I would probably take out 1 swamp and add a plains. I'll probably do that right after, because I feel like I play plains, or I eventually will play plains more. Then we have 5 mountains. Didn't splurge these at all. These are all basic. I play 1 red deck, a mono red deck, and I put all of my cool swamp mountains in there. So all of those mountains are really cool. And then we have 5 islands. That ends the mana base. It's not crazy. I definitely think you can upgrade it. I definitely think you can upgrade this deck as well. There is multiple cards that were just too expensive for me to buy at the time, such as some of the very expensive 0 mana artifacts, such as Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, stuff like that, Jeweled Lotus, Mox Amber. All those things could be in this deck to make it faster. For creature-wise, I can't really think of anything that's better. I think there's all the good mirror are in this deck. If you have any recommendations for me for anything in this deck, please just put it in the comments. I will read all of them, and I will probably change my deck. And maybe if I've changed enough, I'll make a updated version of this deck. Anyway, thank you guys for watching my Urtet Remnant of Memnarch Commander deck tech. I thank you guys for watching through it. I thank you for all the feedback you left me. If you did, feel free to leave any feedback. I love constructive criticism, and have a great evening.